This is Classes and Objects. My name is Chris Lee and my student number is S2248178778. To begin this demo, we're going to launch the debugger with function F11. We move down to line 10, and what we are doing here is creating an instance object of the car class called testCar, and we are passing three values, 10, 25.5, and 100,000. That's great, but in order to sort of determine what that's doing, we're going to move across to the car class. Here we have a few instance variables. They're going to hold the values that we're passing to the instance object. We'll come down to the constructor, which is going to sort of set up how the object itself is going to be created. It'll do this by associating the values that we pass the instance object to the instances fields. We will use this keyword, which sort of refers to the specific instance of the class, which for us is testCar. So now we're back in main, and we can see that we began with testCar, and the value was null. We've associated the values that we've passed here with the instances fields, and we can see that those values have reflected accordingly. Next, we will call the drive method. We pass it a double of 20. We move back to the car class and we find out what that method is doing. The idea here is that we're simulating a car trip. So to start, we want to print some stats about the car, such as how many miles the car has driven and the amount of fuel that we have before the trip begins. We can do this by using an accessor method called getTotalMiles. And what that's going to do is just get the value stored inside the instance variable miles driven. And I'm using a string formatter n just to add a comma to that for some legibility. Now, in order for us to return updated values, we're going to take the distance driven and add it to the miles driven. So we began with 100,000 and we've traveled a distance of 20. That's the value we passed it here. So it's 100,000 plus 20 is going to give us 100,020, as expected. We want the amount of fuel that we're beginning the trip with, so we'll use another accessor method called getFuel. This does the same thing, except we are now accessing the fuel instance variable. So that's going to return 25.5. Now, in order to determine how much fuel we used for the trip, we're going to create a new double called fuel consumed. It's going to take the distance driven, which was 20, divided by the miles per gallon, which is 10, and that'll give us a value of 2 for fuel consumed, which we will then subtract from the amount of fuel that we began the trip with. So fuel is now 23.5. This line essentially just prints some stats about the trip. It's going to say that we drove 20 miles and we consumed fuel at a rate of 10 miles per gallon. Now that we're post-trip, we want to return updated values, so we'll use the accessor methods again. This is the getFuel one. We access the fuel instance variable, which now has a value of 23.5. We can say that fuel consumed was 2 gallons, and then we're going to call another method called convert to liters, which we passed the amount of fuel that we used, which was 2. And we come up here, so we have a new double liters equals 2 gallons times 4.546. And that's how many liters we used on the trip, which is 9.092. We come down again, we want the updated miles on the car post-trip, so we're going to use the accessor method getTotalMiles again. It checks the instance variable miles driven, which is now 100,020, and it returns that. And we move on. The final method that we're using is called calculate cost. This takes the fuel used on the trip, which was 2. It comes up here, and we declare another double called fuel cost. And what that's going to be is liters. The value of that is going to be liters times the constant fuel price. That was defined up near our instance variables at a value of 1.385. So it's 2 times 1.385. When we return this fuel cost, which is going to be 2.77, I'm using another string formatter called C3. This is going to print it as a currency to 3 places. And we can see that reflected in the terminal here, $2.77 to 3 places. Now, to sort of associate the terminal output with what we've just done in the program, our accessor methods at the start gave us our starting miles and starting fuel amount of 100,000 and 25.5 gallons. The drive method was passed at a double of 20, So we've driven 20 miles and we consumed fuel at a rate of 10 miles per gallon. That means that we have a remaining 23.5 gallons because we used or consumed 2 gallons, which converts to 9.092 litres. This is our post-trip updated information. We have 100,020 miles on the car, and that concludes the demo. Thank you.